Chapter 22. Pickett Hall was the original building that housed the entirety of the first college in what would become the University District. In those early days, the land-grant university offered only two subjects, law and agriculture. Though the building stood 3 stories tall, it measured less than 100 feet in length, with a total interior space under 12,000 square feet. The campus itself was surrounded by vast agricultural fields where various crops were cultivated for demonstration purposes. The law school existed prior to the introduction of the Juris Doctor degree. Yet the deeper irony of Pickett Hall's foundation lay in how far the outcomes strayed from its founding ideals. Most agricultural graduates went on to implement sharecropping systems that benefited landowners while exploiting laborers. African Americans in particular were trapped in cycles of debt designed to keep them tied to the land. Even more troubling, many of the law graduates used their expertise to undermine early efforts to challenge racial segregation. Despite this troubling legacy, the university eventually demolished Pickett Hall in the early 20th century and replaced it with a more modern institution offering a broader range of disciplines. Wealthy industrialists from across the country invested heavily in the university to strengthen the technical training of future graduates. Soon after, liberal arts and medical schools emerged, capitalizing on the institution's growing reputation. The surrounding fields gave way to newly built homes for professors and staff. As the faculty expanded, so too did the residential neighborhood that formed around them. The university's seemingly endless expansion became a running joke among locals. Some swore it would one day swallow the entire city. But that momentum came to a halt with the onset of the Great Depression. Even after tuition was lowered, enrollment dropped to a near standstill. Faculty and staff lost their positions due to severe budget constraints. Oddly enough, the agricultural department experienced a resurgence as students viewed it as a more stable path to employment. The relatively new School of Engineering also saw increased enrollment. For nearly a decade, those two departments were the only ones able to sustain themselves. In the late 1930s, the agricultural department began shifting its focus toward petrochemicals and their use as fertilizers. Around the same time, Saul Ward, rumored to have ties to organized crime during Prohibition, purchased the last remaining university-owned fields once used by agricultural students. Known to many as the Warden, Ward was the undisputed boss of the city's democratic political machine. A true kingmaker, he used his influence to control the outcomes of nearly every major election in the city for more than 40 years. In 1939, Ward began construction on a Spanish Revival-style home just half a mile from the university grounds. With its smooth stucco exterior, the house stood out starkly against the deciduous landscape. At the time, several acres surrounding the property remained empty and undeveloped. Locals dubbed it Ward's Compound, and it remained so until his death in 1972. His widow lived there alone for 30 more years, passing away in 2002. By then, the neighborhood had changed completely. Piece by piece, Ward's once sprawling compound was chipped away, subdivided and built over until only the house remained. By the time the Adherents acquired the property, any sign that the area had once been an isolated field had long since disappeared. Today, the Adherents compound still feels out of place in the surrounding neighborhood. Most of the homes are neo-traditional in style, with a scattering of older bungalows. Though color palettes vary, none are white. Nearly every home showcases exposed brick, further highlighting the oddity of the compound's smooth white stucco exterior. High hedges and tall trees obscure it from view, but its presence still irritates some residents. For them, the compound is more than an eyesore. It's a lingering nuisance. There were also concerns that even some humanities professors privately shared, but rarely voiced given the social expectations of their disciplines. The residents of the university district were uniformly upper middle class, if not outright wealthy. Professors, faculty, influential alumni, and local elites all called the area home. While they appreciated the Adherents' outreach to the poor, they preferred it happen elsewhere. Word had spread through the city's homeless community that the Adherents never turned anyone away. As a result, transients, many of whom had first received help downtown, began making the long walk to the University District seeking further assistance. The Adherents, as always, complied. Soon, a string of break-ins and petty thefts were blamed on those making their way to the compound. Whether the incidents were actually connected didn't matter, at least not in the court of public opinion. Frustrated residents sought ways to evict the Adherents, but found their options limited. Ironically, the only home in the district old enough to qualify for historic designation was the Adherents compound. Attempts to form a neighborhood association failed, and efforts to rezone the area stalled due to the presence of a nearby rectory. It became clear that the Adherents weren't going anywhere, not unless they chose to. Eventually, the group agreed to relocate their outreach efforts further downtown and began actively discouraging unannounced visits to the compound. For a time at least, this uneasy compromise held. Of course, there was still the problem of visibility. Multiple residents had witnessed Gerald Height's arrest firsthand. Cardinal Nguyen had publicly embarrassed himself that afternoon, shouting at police officers in full view of the neighborhood. The death of a visiting clergyman, killed in a head-on collision with a drunk driver, had made the local news. And rumors still swirled around the mysterious death of Alfonso Silva. Each incident remained a loose thread in the public eye. Fortunately for the Adherents, no one had yet connected all three events. To the broader public, it still looked like a string of unfortunate coincidences. Only a handful of outsiders had begun to piece things together. But now, high atop the compound, a conversation was underway, one Cardinal Nguyen hoped would change everything. Aha, aha, aha! His performative laughter echoed through the upstairs corridors of the Adherents compound. Though his arm was badly sprained from the car accident just nights earlier, the long, dark sleeves of his suit and matching black gloves concealed any sign of injury. Nguyen was obsessively attentive to his appearance. Though just over 50, he didn't look a day over 30. His dark skin was smooth and unblemished, his face free of even a single wrinkle. His black hair was immaculately groomed, without a hint of gray, and his hairline followed a flawless curve along his temples, sharp and youthful. To most, he could have passed for someone 20 years younger. Nguyen was equally meticulous about his speech. He had worked hard to erase all traces of his accent. In conversation, his cadence and diction blended seamlessly with those of native speakers. The only tell, the one thing he hadn't yet mastered, was his laughter. Staged, hollow, performed. Truth be told, Cardinal Nguyen rarely found anything worth laughing about. He was a serious man holding a weighty position. The Adherents were an international institution with a long history of conflict with secular authority. In the Far East, where the movement had originated, such tensions were easier to manage. Cultural norms emphasized collectivism and self-sacrifice for the good of the whole, instincts that protected the group during crises. But in the West, things were different. The Adherents were charged with spreading their message to every corner of the globe. No one could be left behind. The West, particularly America, was far wealthier than the Far East, and a single American recruit could raise more money than hundreds of others overseas. But this advantage came at a cost: the vanity of Western adherents. In the West, everything revolved around the individual. How much good could one person do? Would their rank rise faster if they helped more people? Could less effective clergy be removed to make room for someone more productive? These were the questions that plagued American clergymen. Only Cardinal Nguyen understood how powerful it could be to quietly pit one against another. Seated across from his desk was a recruit, barely 20. Nguyen couldn't recall his name, but it didn't matter. The young man had the look, vulnerable enough to listen, unlikely to question. Identifying such individuals was part of the job. The real challenge was balance. Finding someone naive enough to step outside the law, yet competent enough to carry out the task. It was always a gamble, which was why Nguyen tried to avoid these situations altogether. But the events of the past few weeks had spiraled beyond control. Something had to be done, swiftly. And on the other side of the table sat a possible solution. You do understand, don't you? That there are those who are out to destroy what we're doing, said Cardinal Nguyen. The nameless young man nodded. Good. Because there's really a whole lot more to this story than you've been told. I tried my best to keep the Adherents' good name out of the press, but I'm afraid that time has come and gone. Tell me, how familiar are you with Father Gerald Height? The young man sat in silence, staring directly at Nguyen. At first, the cardinal wasn't sure he'd heard the question, but before he could repeat himself, the young man's eyes lit up. He leaned forward in his chair. Yes, I remember him. He wore glasses sometimes. Yes, you're correct. Father Height did sometimes wear glasses. I remember him. He led the morning meditation sessions, right? I only went to a few. I'm usually not up that early. I know, it's something I need to work on. He giggled nervously, offering the confession like an apology. Aha, 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 the cardinal said again, his performative laughter ringing through the office as he pretended to be amused by the young man's anecdote. I suppose we all could afford to wake up a little earlier. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, are you aware of what happened to Father Height? Not especially, the young man replied. Ah, well, it's not good news. Father Height was arrested in this very house just a few days ago, in the middle of the afternoon. It was terrible, really. I hated seeing him carried out like that in handcuffs. But you must understand, if what they're accusing him of is true, then it's far worse than anyone could imagine. Wait, the young man's voice trailed off. What's the accusation? It's almost unspeakable, Cardinal Nguyen said, shifting in his chair. He glanced at the books lining the western wall, pausing deliberately, as if struggling to speak after the loss of a beloved mentee. It's awful, really. What happened? Before I arrived, there was a young priest here named Father Silva. He was a candidate for the senior clergy, brilliant student, but unfortunately he had a drug problem. We're not sure exactly when it started, but at some point he relapsed. Heavy use. We only discovered it after money and valuables went missing from the storeroom downstairs. Looted, the young man exclaimed, eyes wide. Yes, the cardinal said. Father Silva stole several $1,000s to feed his habit. We couldn't find him for weeks. And at some point, he must have introduced drugs to Father Height. He sighed, then lowered his head and shielded his face, as if wiping away a tear. Within a matter of weeks, Father Height had become a heavy user as well. He started stealing from our donations. When I confronted him, he denied everything. Did you call the police? Not at first. I told them both they were banned from holding the morning meditation meetings. I confiscated the keys to our mobile food pantry and started locking the storeroom downstairs. But when they couldn't get in, they broke into the sanctuary and stole valuables from the altar. They did what? Why didn't anyone know? The young man asked. Because we caught them in the act. They escaped before they could take anything else. We lost contact with them. A few days later, poor Father Silva was found dead in his home. Dear God. I assume it was drug dealers, Nguyen said, his voice barely above a whisper. I cared for Father Height. I finally reached him by phone and asked him to come home. I told him we would find a way to work through it. And did he? Yes, he agreed. I was just happy he was safe again. But before we could even begin discussing treatment options, he was arrested by homicide detectives. The young man stared at him. You don't mean... Yes, the cardinal replied. Dear God, the young man whispered, how is that possible? Father Height is a murderer? Yes, the cardinal said again. The room fell into silence. Then, almost timidly, well, what are you going to do? The young man asked. There's very little I can do right now, Cardinal Nguyen said. Father Height was released at some point. I'm still trying to figure out why. What I do know is that the valuables they stole are still sitting in Father Silva's home. What I need is for someone to retrieve them for me. Well, maybe I can help. That's why I called you up here. I knew I could count on you. He leaned forward slightly. I need you to look for two things. A small notebook and a small figurine. What do they look like? The notebook will likely be a cheap one, black with white spots on the front, the kind you'd find at any supermarket. The pages are lined and should contain Father Silva's handwritten notes. Once you find it, don't read them. Just Bring them back here. And the figurine? It's also black, about the size of your hand. Use gloves when handling it. Bare skin can damage the paint. I see. I'll do anything to help. That's good. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Cardinal Nguyen smiled. He opened a drawer, removed a folded list of directions, and handed it to the young man. The recruit took it eagerly, glanced at the page, folded it once, and tucked it into his pocket. You know, Nguyen said, his tone shifting, there comes a time in every recruit's life when they realize they're going to do great things. We all have moments we wish we could rewrite. But you have to understand, those choices, good or bad, made you who you are. What matters isn't dwelling on the past. It's recognizing opportunities when they come. And today, an opportunity has presented itself to you. Think of the mistakes you've made. How can you seize this moment without repeating them? An awkward silence followed. The young man blinked. He didn't know what to say. Nguyen had tried to sweeten the deal, but the message was muddled. The recruit simply wasn't keeping up. It was all a haze. The cardinal leaned forward, elbows on the desk, eyes fixed on the young man. Without Silva, without height, I'm dreadfully understaffed. If you do this for me, I'll speak with the other cardinals. We may open the program to one below the minimum age. He let the promise hang. You could be the youngest clergyman in the entire country. The young man beamed. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, only a weak, breathless sound. He started to sweat. His lips moved again, but nothing emerged. He fumbled, wide-eyed and blinking, unable to form a sentence. Just think about it, Nguyen said, reclining in his chair. The young man nodded once, stood up, and turned to leave. He nearly tripped over the chair, then gently tapped it back into place. He walked toward the open doorway. Before stepping out, he turned back and caught the cardinal's eye. Nguyen was fully reclined now, relaxed, with a subtle smile on his face. The recruit returned the smile. Then he stepped into the hallway, still without words.